Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Triple N Media. I am Dr. NIK NIKAM. In this presentation, we're going to look at 10 steps to editing a raw portrait image taken from a Nikon D750. And I will give you exactly what camera I have used, what lens I have used, and what flash I have used. And then we'll go through 10 steps of editing a portrait image so that it looks exactly like you want it to look. When these raw images come off the camera, they look so dull and dusky. You wonder what the hell happened to your camera. Don't worry, that's not the problem with the camera. So let's talk about the camera I'm using is a Nikon D750 with the prime lens 85 millimeters. With the prime lens, I don't know if you can see it, with a prime lens 85 millimeters 1.8 f, and my f-stop is set to 2.2. So they say never shoot at the lowest level. The next thing I have is a Godox remote control for the flash, because since I'm interested in portraits, I don't want the flash to be on camera because then you can't get close-up images. So the best thing is to put them on a tripod stand, which I'm going to show you in a minute as how I have done it, and then run this at my settings here, or let me tell you, my ISO white balance is set to auto, my ISO is set to minimum 100 and a max of 6400. That's what's recommended for Nikon D70 for indoor activities. My shutter speed is set at 250 to avoid any handshakes and small motion. Since I'm using a prime lens, the depth of field is very narrow. And let's see what else you would like to know. And it is set on manual and f2.2. So these are all the camera settings, and let us look at some pictures and I will walk you through these 10 steps of editing a raw image. If you have any questions about this video, please do post them. I'll try to answer them, and because it is really mind-boggling. People spend several $1,000s and buy a camera and they're afraid to do raw images. They say, oh man, if you look at it, it looks so dull. I mean, how am I going to show it to somebody? And that's the natural feeling. I had this camera for almost a couple of years, and after that I got fed up. One fine morning, got up and I said, I'm going to set to images, raw images and fine JPEG combination, so that if somebody wants to see the pictures, you take them immediately and send them the JPEG pictures just for review while you're processing the raw images. Okay, that's enough of talking. Before we look at any pictures, I want to walk you through the 10-step raw portrait editing list here. You can try auto process, which will give you a quick overview of how Lightroom would process a raw image, and a fairly decent job it does, but we'll see if we need to fine tune after we do that one. Then finally, number 2 is cropping the image, which is very important, so that if you're doing portraits, you don't want extraneous objects in this one. You may want to center or off-center the subject. For that, you would do the cropping. White balance is the next thing. And the beauty of raw images is that you can precisely dial the temperature, not just adjusting the white balance based on the Doppler or any other process. This is much more accurate than any other process. We're going to look at tones. Tones are like here. These are different tone curves, which changes the color of the object based on the color we select here and adjust these tonal curves. Finally, we have number 6 is clarity and texture, which is right here in this section. So we started off with cropping, then we went to try the auto, see how the program will process the white balance. Then we can do the exposure, either increase or decrease. I wouldn't do much contrast, because if you're doing portraits, you don't want to make them look like stiff plastic models. So then we have the highlights and all this, texture, overall highlights and shadow. Then if they have a particular dress which is green or red, if you want to highlight that one, you can either increase the hue, saturation, or luminance of that particular color. Finally, we come to individual colors. That's what it is. And then we can sharpen the image, which is in this area. All of them are just from the top to bottom here. And finally, export them as JPEG images. And we'll talk about that. Anyway, let's start off with the first image. This is a raw image, which is taken from my Nikon D750. I'm approximately 10 feet away from the subject towards its left in the living room. And here we have all these things which looks pretty dull, and I think that's what discourages most people to not shoot in RAW and just go with JPEG. But once you learn how to process the RAW images, you will never go back to JPEGs as your sole source, especially if you're shooting portraits or glamour shots. Anyway, so this is the raw image starting here, and let me just walk you through these images. And here's my flash, which is 10 to 12 feet, 10 feet from the subject, which is on the opposite side of the wall. And since I'm using f1.8, the depth of field is very, very shallow. So anyway, okay, here's the flash here, and here's the next image with the flash, and this is the next one, which is close up like a portrait, and this is focused on the model. And here's an image which is focused on my flower pot. Let's see if we need to do any changes for these. And finally, this is focused right into the eyes of the model. And it looks dull, and we see how best we can edit this. It is like taking a side pose. And this is focus on the right eye. The previous one was focused on the left eye. And because I'm using prime lens, I want to say that, you know, you're going to see which, this is a little bit out of focus compared to this one. And the same thing here. This is focused, and this is just tiny bit out of focus. Anyway, so let's start off with the first image here. And our first step is to try auto raw picture correction by Lightroom. See how Lightroom does. Bingo. I mean, that looks pretty good to me. What do you think? So if you are in a rush, if the client is sitting next to you and they want to see how it looks before they leave the studio, then you can use this. Look at all these settings that has been done here. It changed the temperature, it changed the exposure, little contrast, highlights. But by using these, you can learn as how the camera is thinking, so that you can just tweak this a little bit to your fine liking. The most of the time, I think when you're doing portraits, I think the most important thing is the person's face. So the rest of the things, to me, I think they look fairly good. Then you can just focus on the subject based upon this list which we have here on the clarity and texture. And one of the other things that I have not put here, which I need to put, that will make it 11, and that is using this masking tool. Using the masking tool, which is this like a cartwheel here, masking tool, and then selecting just the face and the skin, or selecting the background, and other options are available there. You can individually select the color, and you can have multiple masks. I have a video on how to use multiple masks on a portrait image. You can watch that one. Okay, let's continue with this. So we got this one done, and since this is like a broad image, I don't know if I really need to tweak anything here. So let's see what happens if I cut down the highlights. I think you see, this is too bright here. The face, you can see some shininess, and so it has brought down the highlights so that there's no light reflected off the nose here. And if you bring it down even better, I think it's done a very good job, I should say. If you want to bring the blacks down so the hair will look darker, that's the beauty of it. You know, if you want the background to look darker, that will also help, especially dark colors ones like the chair. If you look at the chair here, see the chair is kind of grayish white, and if you come down here, the chair, I think chair is a good indication of, you know, how the natural looks, and I would leave it there. So always look for objects which you know you can match, like a grayscale matching, in other words. All right. So it has not done much to the texture and clarity. That only applies close-up portraits, which I'm going to show in the next couple of images, and individual colors. So let's say I want to highlight the greens here. So I can just go to green color here. This highlights the whole thing. You start off with the saturation and you bring down the greens. And it kind of just has a subtle change actually. See if it doesn't change. Yellow, let's look at yellow here. But if you do yellow, it's going to change the flower also. And this is an overall stuff, so it doesn't help. Okay, here you can make just a subtle change, like the yellow flowers are looking better, and you can go to the red one, but the red also affects the skin color. There's the red, you can see that looks like red color, and if we go all the way here, that really improves the red color without affecting the subject. In that way, you can highlight. This works particularly for the dress they are wearing, since they don't affect the skin color or tone. You can use them individually. So for example, this blue, which is here, let's go to blue here and bring down the blue. Okay, there you see, you can increase the blue color. You can increase the blue color. So individually, I think I would use the individual colors more so in terms of changing the surroundings for a portrait, much less the portrait itself. Okay, the next thing we're going to move is we did the cropping. We didn't do the cropping. Let me show that one. If you want to crop, all you do is Control R, then you can just adjust these whatever way you like. So the subject is the main presentation. So if this is too much, then you can just bring it down and bring it. Always make it look like it's a nice portrait picture. So now we have this one, and we haven't lost anything by cropping, because this is a raw image and it has a lot of information. So let's move on to the next image. Well, okay, so we covered cropping. We tried auto, which we felt this was reasonable, since this is a broader image. When you get close to the portrait faces, then it has done some adjustments in the exposure, highlights. It has changed. We played around with that. The texture and clarity applies mostly to the face, which we're going to look at in the next images. And it's did some color changes and sharpening. It has already done some sharpening. If you want to sharpen some more, you can do this one. And you can play around with these until you get. Then we can also enable lens profile correction, which is important. This is Nikon 85 millimeters. So it automatically, so let's see here. This is before, and this is with the lens. And we should do this one every time we start off, so that will apply to all the future images that we are going to process. So this is without lens correction, this is with lens correction. I think I will make sure that this is turned on. And so cropping, we finished. You can also give a border. You can give a border, because if you crop an image, you can't apply the border as it is. There are too many ways, different ways to do it. So this was just taken to show my room settings. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. You can just use an auto, and this is okay. So let's move on to the next picture, which is more like a portrait. And now we want to see, let's apply the auto here and see what it says. It's done a pretty good job. Now let's look at the white balance. When we shoot raw images, we get the option of using color temperature. And let me show you the difference in the color temperature. And if you bring that all the way here, everything becomes blue. If you take all the way here, it becomes yellow. So you want to leave, this was at 6400, you can just say Control Z, it will take to 6600. And if you want to just give a little more orange color, that's too much. And if you want to give a little lighter color, 5900. I like the skin tone to be natural, whatever that person's skin tone is. And unfortunately, the flash makes everybody's skin look whiter because it's a daylight, and I hate that. So in this way, if you put it on here, see it's already 60. The daylight is 5600, and it because the room light is there, which is tungsten. I would say like maybe 2700 kelvins. So the image has overcompensated to get us this image, but this is this yellow tinge. So let's go back to reversing this and leave it at 6600. Even then I see it's a little bit yellow, so we can just bring it closer to 6200. And so that's how you adjust the white balance. The white balance, I think, should be more focused on the face because that's what people see. Not all, the surroundings are fine, but to me, I think the person's face. This is a temperature tint which you can change and see if it makes this kind of green, this kind of pink. You can just give it a little pink color, just a touch of it, so that people, we all have sort of a pink touch, like like a blush people put, and that's the kind of stuff you like to recreate. So if you go to pink all the way, that's too much. Just maybe like a 10 point here, and so that's what. See, this was before, and this is now. You can see we are already making some difference. Again, we can play with all these things, and like this is where now the texture and clarity comes in. I can move the clarity, which will make everything kind of like a plastic model. But this is a plastic model, and if you go all the way here, it looks kind of really rigid, like a iron model. So you just clarity. Sometimes if people have rough skin, you can just bring it down to like 10 or 12. Since this model is already has smooth skin, which you can try this one and adjust the texture. As we come along here, we don't need to, and I already talked about adjusting the red color, which will affect only the red flowers, which I will do because I want all the surroundings to be more dramatic. Then actually the picture we take should make the subject look better than they actually are in real life, and the surroundings to accent that person. I mean, that's my ultimate goal. So we have yellow here, so we can increase the yellow color as long as it doesn't affect the skin color, which is in the orange and yellow. And so these yellows are here, and if we see the before, this is before, and just look at these yellow structures here. That's good. And we did, then we have some blue here. See what can do with the blue here. Let's increase the blue color. So see, now the blue color is showing up with the flower pot, and the green also we can try it, but this changes may be very subtle. Okay, even the green looks better here. So if you look at this is an image before. This is an image before, and this is afterwards. So we've done all these things. We talked about sharpening. Let's move to the next picture and see what we can do here. And this is a raw image. All right. So let's start off with some exposure and play with this one. Underexposed, overexposed. Do you think we needed a 0.6 half a stop increase in exposure? Let's put it back to 0 and see what the computer does, and then we can tweak that one. And it went to 0.86, so I was pretty close. See, this is to me this light reflection here, light reflection from the hair. So let's cut down this one. You just want to come down when it's a little bit dull and then go up a little bit, because when this image is posted on social media, they compress so much, you're going to lose some important details. So by going up and then just coming down one step may be the right thing to do. So we've done that one. It has done the highlights and all this. So let's just focus on the face. Here we can come and make it a little bit smoother. As you can see, it looks smoother here, which may not be this 32, maybe too much. We can increase the texture also. I would probably cut it down to like 20. And when we do these things, we may have to adjust the exposure finally. So these are like 20 just to fine tune these areas. And as we come down here, saturation like we did before, we can play with the red color to brighten up the red color. It all depends on, you want the subject to be more prominent than the flowers. I mean, obviously the flowers are drawing a lot of attention too. Anyway, let's go to yellow here. Let's change. I don't want to change the whole wall color. It does the overall change. And sharpening, we can go all the way to sharpening here. And I think this is a good way to sharpen, because if your image is kind of all like diffuse, you can sharpen the image. The way I look at sharpening is they look at their nose bridge. If it's sharp enough, I think that's an indication that we have reached the level where we want the sharpening to be. As everything we do, it affects. And finally, I said, let's see what else we got. Okay, the camera, enable camera. All right, so we done those things. Let's see what else we can do here. Sharpening details. And like you want to add a border and you want to keep the whole picture, then we can come over here and use the scale and just drop it down to 96. That's what I use. And now you have a beautiful portrait picture. And this is before and this is afterwards, processing just a little bit. This is a good way to start off. And once we learn more and more, then we can go fine tune these things. So for example, this color tone is something which you can either, it's like a S-shaped curve, which is supposed to, that's too blue, all the way blue here, this is red. And if you come here, it will be red. So you just don't want too much. You just want a touch. And this is, it's supposed to be like an S curve. And this is supposed to be like this sine wave, like a gentle S curve, if you like it. If you don't like it, we can just go. I think I like this one better, so because you got still that slight pink tinge which is necessary. And there are a lot of, I have a separate video on tonal curve adjustments. Each one of these white, red, green, and blue, what they do individually, you can watch that one. Okay, so we've done it, and let's go to the flower pot here. This is the flower pot. It looks dull, as you can see. And let's start off here with auto correction, and it does a good job. So now we're going to, since this is not a person, my main focus will be on colors. So we're going to go to the red color. We're going to increase the red color here, make it more dramatic. We also have magenta. Where's that magenta? So we'll go to magenta, and purple. We can increase, and we also increase the yellow color. And we also go to luminance, and we do the same thing. So luminance, they give a little more, shininess. Same thing with the magenta and yellow. Maybe too much. All right, and the blues I think kind of can be accented here. I'll go to saturation and do the blue. I think we have a lot more latitude playing with these individual colors when we are looking at the dress or the surroundings. But when it comes to skin, it has to be pretty precise. Here's the before, and this is afterwards. With using auto correction and then tweaking that one, which will be, and let's say you want to copy these changes, you press Control C, and it will, you can just see what are the things you want to copy. Is the basic elements. We want to curves. If we have used tonal curves, you can color mix, color grading, detail, lens correction, transform, effects, masking, all of these crop, whatever you have, you can copy this and apply it to the next picture, which I'm going to show here. So let's start off with this one. This is like a portrait, real portrait, close-up image. So this is the first step is to do we want to crop this one? I mean, if you want to crop, you can go and crop here, but I'm not going to do that one because I don't need to crop this for right now. Or let's go ahead and crop this one. Just make it a portrait. I don't want to eliminate all the lights, and this is kind of bothering me. But anyway, so this is fine. Now once we have cropped the image, let's apply the auto and see what it does. And we need to go to lens correction here. I have to figure out how to get the lens correction applied. And to me, it looks like it may be overcorrected with the exposure. So I'm going to bring the exposure down. That's good. Just a tag and 70. So now I'm already getting a feeling that even though I have used flash, my exposure was a little bit under, especially as we get closer to the subject. And the eyes are focused. The next thing we can do is if you want to use some texture, and if you go clarity is too smooth, you come down here, just maybe 10 points, something like that. And this is before, this is afterwards. But every time we change this texture and everything else, this one becomes, you can go up. Finally, exposure should be the final one to say how good it is. See, the color temperature is 6600. My flash temperature was 5600, the Godox V1. And now if you want to change this color anyway, maybe a pink tinge more than, that's good. 11 instead of, so this was before and this is afterwards. As you can see, it's a white, sort of a yellow wall. I don't like bright background. I like darker backgrounds. So if you want to change the texture, the presence, the thing is to play with the vibrance, which gives you yellow here, and of course blue, black and white, and I would just ever so slightly adjust this as you like to see it. So this one, now I have got all these things, so I can press Control C, which will collect all the information from this picture. I will copy this. Now I come to the next picture and I press Control V like Victor. Bingo, it has applied all those changes to this one, just as we had done in the previous picture. 6600 Kelvin, exposure, highlights, all of these have been done. And since this is a very close-up portrait, I can maybe increase this a tag and then come down. See, too bright, and just one step below that would be the way to go. So ladies and gentlemen, this is before and this is afterwards. See how fast we can do processing. The initial 2 or 3 pictures are tough, but after that, here's another one. Now Control B will get me what I want. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. You can actually apply the crop on all these things. Let me go back to the previous image and apply the crop, and then we'll copy that and see what is going to happen. Where's this crop? Okay. We crop this image, all right? Now I'm going to Control C, copy the whole thing. Where's the crop here? So let's see if we check the crop. Okay, we need to check the crop, so that aspect ratio. Okay, now this has been done. Now let's go to the next image, which was already processed using this one. Now apply crop. It applies a crop. Everything that you have done in the previous image will be copied and pasted to the next image. So if the portraits are of the same type of distance and exposure, this is the best way to copy it, and then we obviously have to fine tweak the exposure and a few other things. I hope this has been useful and educational to you. This is a long learning process, but once you start shooting in raw images, I think you'll never go back. Just like when you buy the camera, you're afraid to press the click button, but then say, oh, just put it on auto and go shoot some pictures and enjoy it. Then it may take you a couple of years before you say, oh, my God, I can't do raw images. I don't know how to process it. Well, now you know how to process raw images. We've done 8 images here, and this will get faster and faster as like anything else, like playing tennis. And in the as you get more familiar with it, you can do it in a couple of minutes. Most of these tweaks to a reasonable end result. I know it's a long video. I hope this has been useful to you. Thank you so much for watching, and please do follow us. We got a lot of Lightroom tips and camera tips, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.